Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us for Long Beach Symphony's Musically Speaking series hosted by Music Director Eckart Preu. My name is Kelly Lucera. I'm president of the Long Beach Symphony, and we are so excited to bring you this virtual series featuring interviews with world-class performers, conductors, and composers, combined with artistic topics relevant to today's world. This evening, we are thrilled to kick off our 2021 Musically Speaking schedule by welcoming a very special guest and longtime friend of the Symphony, Grammy Award-winning conductor and beloved former Long Beach Symphony music director, JoAnn Falletta, live from Buffalo, New York. And now, please welcome to our virtual stage, Musically Speaking host, Long Beach Symphony music director, Eckart Preu, and the wonderful former Long Beach Symphony music director, JoAnn Falletta. Welcome, JoAnn and Eckart.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, JoAnn Falletta, for being with us here today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Happy New Year. And speaking of which, do you usually conduct New Year's Eve concerts or New Year's Day, maybe some Viennese waltzes? And what did New Year's Eve look like in the Falletta household this year, or last year, actually?
Well, you know, it was different this year, last year. Most often I have conducted a Beethoven 9 around this time in Hawaii, because that's become a Hawaiian tradition that we start the new year with Beethoven 9, a beautiful way to start, you know, thinking of the brotherhood of people. But we didn't do it this year, of course, so it was a very quiet new year. Very quiet, but you know, we'll come around to having our normal life again very soon.
Yeah. And many people, and not me, are very diligent about thinking about New Year's resolutions. What are your New Year resolutions?
You know, this year especially, I did have one because I felt that I needed to, and I wanted to encourage myself to be as positive as possible, because I don't know if you've experienced this, Maestro, or maybe some of the other people listening. I was starting to get depressed now and then, you know, about the fact that we couldn't give concerts with audiences and we couldn't go to a restaurant, and you know, it was getting a little blue, and I thought, you know, now is not the time to be depressed. Now is the time to be filled with optimism, and that's my resolution. So. And this certainly helps, being with my friends in Long Beach. So thank you.
It's a great resolution. I'll adopt that one. But many people here in Long Beach remember you from the time when you served as music director for, I think, 11 years, starting in 1989. And back then, it was and still is rather unusual for women to be music directors. You know, as a matter of fact, you're actually one of the rather few women who have held music director positions with orchestras. In the US, you were music director in Long Beach, in Virginia, in Buffalo, and others. Now, a lot of things have changed in the music world. So, you know, blind auditions, of course, have kind of eliminated the all-male orchestra. And we have, of course, a lot of female composers, a lot of very prolific female guest artists, soloists. But the conducting world is lagging a little bit behind, you know, I mean, in particular in terms of music directorships, where I think I read a statistic fairly recently where there's like 10% of orchestras in the United States are conducted by women, which seems a lot to me right now. I think it's actually fewer than that. In Europe, definitely fewer. So the Long Beach Symphony was ahead of its time for sure when they hired you. How did it actually come about for you to take over the music directorship of the Long Beach Symphony?
Well, they had advertised the position, and I think many conductors applied for it because it had such a great reputation of excellence. And I applied and hoping, but not knowing. And I was one, I think, of 5 or maybe 6 people who came the following year. And it just, for me, it felt like an ideal chemistry. Not only was the community so involved in the orchestra and so supportive and so in love with the orchestra, frankly. They loved the Long Beach Symphony, but the musicians were superb. And these were musicians who played in the operas and the LA Opera. They played in the studios, all of them, made all the great movies. They played in the LA Philharmonic. It was an astonishing group of artists. So it was really a dream appointment for a young conductor, and I feel very, very lucky.
How aware were you or are you that you are a woman conducting? You know, I mean, you are in many ways, I think, a revolutionary, or at least a pioneer in the conducting world. How aware are you of that? Or do you just kind of ignore that part? And what, or if it does influence you, how did that influence you?
You know, I tended to ignore it because I didn't even realize it. As I decided when I was about 11 years old, because of a concert I heard that just moved me so much, that I wanted to be a conductor. But my parents were not, it was not a musical family. They did not know that women were not generally seen on podiums. And I didn't realize it either. The first I heard about really this feeling that women were not easily accepted as conductors was when I entered the conservatory, Mannes College in New York City at the age of 18. And I didn't, you know, I didn't think I didn't think I could ever give it up. So I persisted. And so it's never been a very big point. And, you know, sometimes, as you just said, Eckart, that, you know, I'm a pioneer, but I feel like I can't take any credit for being a pioneer because I didn't set out to be a pioneer. I just set out because I love the orchestra music. I love the world of the orchestra. So I haven't paid a great deal of attention to it, but I do realize in retrospect, when Long Beach appointed me, that was a very courageous move on their part. I think that was very, very unusual and very brave.
Right. And I imagine that even as a student, you know, it was unusual. You know, I mean, you have an undergrad from Mannes, as you said, and you have a master's and doctorate from the Juilliard School of Music. And you studied with Bernstein. Now, here comes the Bernstein question. I mean, there must be the Bernstein question. You know, what did you learn from him that we can still see in your conducting? I mean, he was such a charismatic, unique, and particular conductor with such a personal style. You know, it's really inimitable, whatever that word is. It's not really to imitate. How did you translate his physicality in your own physical being and conducting style?
Well, he shared the most important thing with us, and we would see him for master classes, and he would come and conduct our orchestra and work with us. And he was always very kind to us, which was lucky because we were always terrified, as you can imagine. He was such, as you said, charismatic, such a huge personality. But he always stressed the same thing with us, and that is that music is about emotion. He never would talk to us about how we should beat or this or that and subdivide here. No, he refused to talk about that. He never talked about the details of the physical conducting. He always talked about what the music meant to you inside and how to project that to the orchestra and to the audience. And I'll never forget that, because then when we saw him conduct, we saw that. We saw the enormous emotion flowing out of his face, out of his body. And he was not a person to fuss over details. He just wanted to get to the heart of music. And I think that I always now keep that in my heart when I conduct.
Yeah. And in preparation for this interview, I remember there was a couple years ago, I don't know how many years ago, but there was this big uproar and big discussion in the music world after a Russian conductor, Vasily Petrenko, commented about that orchestras and something like react better when they have a man in front of them than a cute girl, because they think about something else. I don't know if that was taken out of context. I have no idea, but it really raised a very interesting question for me, and that is, do we expect orchestras to react the same way to a man than to a woman? Because arguably, when you have a female trumpet player, it sounds different than a male trumpet player. And I think for the physicality of conducting, it is very similar there. Um, where do you stand on this whole orchestra attitude thing?
You know, I think it's been changing, of course. And of course, in my work in the United States, I have felt it probably less than when I started to go to Europe. When I went to Europe, I did feel more of a sense of skepticism or resistance or discomfort, let's say, with the idea of a woman in a leadership role. It just didn't sit comfortably. But frankly, I think that every conductor is different, and it has nothing to do whether they're men or women. You see some men who are so gentle and so kind to the orchestra, and some women who are not kind to the orchestra and you know, very angry all the time. So I think it comes down to the individual person. I had to learn, and I think this was a very important lesson for me to learn, is that the conductor has to accept the authority that comes with the position, that that's not a right, but it's a responsibility, that you are there to make things better, to help things be better. So that was something that I really thought a great deal about when I was first studying conducting. But I think in the end, it doesn't so much matter, or it matters less now. People are less aware of it, and the only thing I realized, especially when I went overseas, is that I had to make sure to be very prepared, to be very ready, to be very to understand really what I was doing with the score, and to be able to work in that way.
Yeah.
So it's as you know, Eckart, conducting is it's a mysterious job. We're always learning, and you know, the musicians are teaching us things, and we're always growing as conductors. But I hope that the age where women would not be accepted at all on the podium is past.
Yeah. I think that you know, it's like so many things. You know, as you said, you cannot explain what makes the chemistry between a conductor and an orchestra, and it can be also age. There's also the problem with age, and I think we've broken through that too. We have a lot of people who are very, very young now, who have music directorships, who are very, very successful now in their 20s, which was unheard of when we studied. And so, but I mean, I've just heard, you know, really, really bad stories, also in particular in Germany, but also in Eastern Europe. And I hope they have come, you know, about how they treat female conductors. And I think it's like, you know, you have just to ignore it and really stick with the music. That is the only thing you really have, and that's how you win people over. Now, you've really made a name for yourself as a very curious musical person. You know, I'm also looking always for new composers and interesting, relevant new voices. But I mean, you've conducted a lot of new music. I mean, I think, like conducted over 100 world premieres or so. What is your path of finding these new pieces? How do you A, get them, B, evaluate them, and how, and maybe you can share like one of your recent musical discoveries, like a composer or a particular work.
I've been curious about music since I became music director. This is before Long Beach, of the Women's Philharmonic in San Francisco, because my background in conducting, my training in conducting was very traditional. I mean, we studied the great composers of the past, and you know, then none of them were women. But when I was asked to be music director of the Women's Philharmonic, they only played pieces by women. And I was very surprised by how much music I had never heard of. And I became fascinated by discovering new pieces. That's where it began. And recently now in Buffalo, we're working for the company Naxos in recording for them. They told us from the very start of our relationship 20 years ago that they didn't want another Dvorak symphony set. They didn't want Brahms symphonies. They wanted me to find things that had never been heard or rarely heard. So that's made me be a kind of explorer, and I love it. And of course, the orchestra is a big part of this. For instance, we recently released a disc by the French composer Florent Schmitt, who I think is a very important figure, not only in France, but in the world, in this transition from Impressionism to modernism in France, and what was in the middle of that. A fantastic music influenced by Ravel, but also influenced by Strauss and Wagner, and this man's personal voice. So it's very exciting to do that. And the musicians, as we did in Long Beach too, I think we did a lot of world premieres in Long Beach, and the musicians could play anything. I always was amazed at how they would tackle a new piece that they'd never played, they'd never heard, there was no recording of it. And the first time, maybe there was a couple of little things that, but you know, for a few notes that went awry. And then the second time through was almost perfect. I mean, that was the kind of musician they are. I mean, it was astonishing. So, and the appetite of the audience there was also very, in Long Beach, is also very laudable, because they wanted the Long Beach Symphony to play a different role than, let's say, the Los Angeles Philharmonic, but to find a way to be unique, to have its own voice, to not have to play all 9 Beethoven symphonies in a season, but to come up with new ideas. And that was a beautiful challenge, and just kept me very, very interested in always looking for new pieces.
This is just a personal question, actually. My experience is that sometimes it is more difficult to rehearse a composition that is very familiar to the musicians than a brand new piece. Because when you have a piece like, you know, Beethoven's Fifth or so, or Beethoven 9, you mentioned Beethoven 9 earlier, everybody has an opinion about it. When you have a new piece by Florent Schmidt, for instance, nobody knows it. So everybody starts from the same from the same knowledge base, which is basically zero. Do you have similar experiences, or do you like to have kind of a pre-existing knowledge? Do you prefer that, or you don't really?
No, I think you're absolutely right. That sometimes when you go and you approach an orchestra with something like a Schubert 8 and Dvorak 9, they also, if they've been playing as an orchestra for a long time, have their way of playing it, which maybe is not exactly your way of playing it. I find this especially true going from an American orchestra to a European orchestra, that their approach to it might be different. And the big question then comes to, how do we find a middle ground? You know, how do you as a conductor respect their vision of that piece and the way that they've played it for maybe 3 or 4 decades together? And incorporate your ideas. And I love that. I love that, because it feels to me, and I bet you feel this way too, Maestro, that, you know, when you're conducting a piece of music, you take into account the people around you. You try and let them inform what the music says. You know, it's not about my Dvorak 8, it's about the Long Beach Symphony's Dvorak 8 and how they can filter themselves into this unity that you try and create. But this is a very, very different way of thinking about music.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now, everything is different nowadays for orchestras, and a lot of orchestras, you know, play without an audience and record and stream their concerts. And as you mentioned, I mean, you've recorded extensively. I think it was like over, I don't know, almost like 120 recordings. You received 10 Grammy nominations. You won 2. Congratulations. I'm kind of curious. Now, Bernstein always insisted in recording live performances. That was something because he really felt that, like, the music making, the atmosphere was so much better or different when you have a live performance setting. When I record nowadays, I don't really care. I don't really feel that much of a difference if there's an audience or not. What has your experience been, you know, recording so much with, and probably also a lot without audience, I think, between kind of a live setting and a studio recording?
It is very different for us because, and Naxos, of course, insists on studio recordings. So yeah, we record in a studio. I mean, we record on our stage, but in studio situation, very carefully, you know, rigorously keeping an eye on the time clock, you know, so we don't run out of time. And I think that those recordings are cleaner and more accurate and free of noise, of course, and you know, very beautifully representative of what the music is. But we have our own label, Beaufleuve, with which we can record pieces that Naxos would not want. And those are all live. And I love those because those might have a little lumpy turn here or there, or you know, a slight accelerometer that might have gotten a little bit out of control. But when I hear those live recordings, I hear the personality of the Buffalo Philharmonic musicians more, and I love that. And And you know, a lot of record companies won't issue live discs because there might be a cough in the audience or there might be a little rustling of something. But to me, it doesn't matter. I mean, I love that sense of live because it's so human, and it's who they are, and it's their excitement in there, not their being careful and perfect. It's their excitement.
Yeah, yeah. And my last question is, I did not know that you started out your musical career as a guitar student, which surprised me, because usually, you know, the guitar is not really an orchestral instrument. Usually conductors come from, you know, they study the violin or cello or piano or maybe even percussion, and then move on to orchestra. But guitarists, I don't really know many or any actually guitarists who have become conductors. How did that happen? And do you see a connection between the guitar, also the multiple voices that you play on a guitar sound or in an orchestral sound? How did that all happen? How did they hang together?
Well, it really happened by accident. My father bought for me on my 7th birthday a classical guitar and arranged for a lesson that day. And that was the beginning of my voyage. I fell in love with that guitar, and I still am in love with the guitar, and I still play. I loved it, and I went. I just never had that guitar out of my hands. But when we started to go to concerts, of course, I became intrigued by the sound of the orchestra. And in a sense, in my life, Eckart, I think it's been very complimentary for me, because the guitar is a very intimate instrument. You may be playing mostly by yourself, sometimes with a handful of chamber pieces, and of course the conducting is a very public thing. I mean, when you're talking to 80 or 90 people and making decisions all the time. I liked that, both of those parts of my life, and I think that playing the guitar did help me as a conductor, because first of all, it's a harmonic instrument, you know, so it has a sense of, you know, making polyphonic lines and moving harmonically. And even Beethoven called the guitar a miniature orchestra, so he loved the guitar, which I love to think about. But the thing that helped me the most, I think, is the fact that the guitar, like the harpsichord, can sustain a sound. So that as a guitarist, you're always kind of creating the illusion of connection, the illusion of a phrase, the illusion of forward momentum, because you can't really do it. And in thinking about music that way, thinking of the architecture of music as to where this phrase goes, where's the sentence end, and how can I lead the ear there on the guitar, made me hyper aware of the architecture of a symphony. So how can I lead someone from the first note of a Mahler symphony to 90 minutes later in a way that seems organic? So that constant interest, I have the constant interest in the architecture of music. So I think I got that really from the guitar.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you're extremely busy. Do you still play? I mean, do you have time?
I still play. I mean, very often now I play with the orchestra musicians in the chamber concerts and things like that. So it's fun for me now. But I don't play as much as I would like. But it's still a part of my life.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain an instrument while you conduct. Yeah. Well, thank you. I believe we have some questions. And so we'll be joined once again by Long Beach Symphony President Kelly Lucera.
Thank you both for allowing us to be part of this conversation. I could listen to the two of you talk about music for hours. So we do have a lot of questions that we want to get to. So JoAnn, what are you most proud of, or what are your favorite memories during your time with Long Beach Symphony?
Oh, there are so many. I was just thinking today of the 2 CDs that we made, Kelly. And how proud I am of the orchestra that played that CD. I mean, that wasn't an unusual thing for them. They always played at that level. I think that the Long Beach Symphony played, due to them and their extraordinary quality, the most beautiful La Mer I ever heard. And that's on one of the discs. And they also played a Martinu Frescoes that was hair-raising. I mean, they were just great. I mean, they are just great. And it's, I remember those. I remember all of the fun things that we did too. I mean, the parties that we used to have with our crescendo group, and those crescendo events were fantastic. All of the friends, and I remember the pre-concert talks, which were wonderful to see people there listening, and it just was a beautiful family. I guess that's in a word, the thing I love the most about it. It was a family in Long Beach, the Symphony family, which had at the core, of course, the musicians, but all of the people who loved them and loved the music and loved having an orchestra in Long Beach. So I have such great memories of it.
And Janet would like to know, what does it feel like to win a Grammy?
Well, the time I was there, actually, there was a couple of years ago. It was scary because, of course, you're sitting there and you're waiting for your turn. And I was holding hands with the composer, my friend Ken Fuchs, gripping each other's hands, knowing that, if this happened, it would be the only time. And when it did, I think the two of us just stopped thinking. Everything went out of our minds. But it was a very, very happy thing, especially for me, because I had been friends with Ken all of my life since school time. And to win a Grammy for his music really made me so happy.
Ben has a question for you both. What is your favorite program to conduct, or what pieces are on your bucket list in terms of collaborations or pieces you've yet to program?
It's hard. It's hard. You want to go first? It's very hard for me to.
Well, yeah, no, you go first. Ladies first.
Well, it certainly, I mean, when you have the chance to conduct a Mahler symphony, that's a great adventure. And I would say that's the thing that sort of really makes me very excited. I mean, about the idea of conducting a Mahler 2 or a Mahler 3, which are my two favorites of that is like a high point always. There are things like Messiaen that I haven't explored, and I want to. I mean, composers like that. That I haven't been able to do yet. So, but frankly, I think that for every conductor, the program that you're working on that week or that month and you're concentrating on, that's where your life is. I mean, you live in those pieces and they are the greatest ones for you in that point, and you have to love them with that kind of intensity.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't really have a bucket list, but over the summer, I've listened to a lot of Bruckner, and Kelly will like this. And I think I want to do all of the Bruckners, maybe not the number 0 and number 1, but I think from the 2 on, I want to do all of them at some point. But I think, and that's impossible probably, and it's ridiculous to think about it during COVID times, is I want to do Schoenberg's Guru Lieder before I die.
Oh.
But you need like 300, 400 people on stage. So Mahler is like
I haven't done that either. Yeah, it's a dream.
Yeah.
JoAnn, Eva asks, what advice would you give young women who are interested in becoming conductors one day?
Well, just to tell them that certainly the door is open for them now. I really believe that. But that it's an endless study road. I mean, that you're constantly learning every day of your life, and you have to love that. You have to love studying scores. You have to love being always immersed in music, and probably it needs to be the single thing that you have to do. But if you are in love with it and that is your world, I think that you should have no qualms about going for it, because now it is the right time.
Mm-hmm. And our longtime friend Bobby, who you know well, asks, she's aware you're artistic advisor to the Hawaii Symphony. What is your role, and is it different working with them remotely?
Well, I've been artistic advisor for a number of years while they are between music directors. And so I go and usually conduct 2 or 3 concerts with them. And then I'm on the phone with them or texting constantly about programs, about musicians, about auditions, all of the things that a music director would do and will do when they find a music director. But it's been wonderful to work with them. It's a very special orchestra, and of course a very special place. Many people have been there, so you know.
Absolutely. She also wants to know, when you fly to Hawaii, do you stop through Long Beach for any reason? Because I'm sure a lot of people would love to see you again.
I would love to do that. I found out after I moved to Buffalo that there was a direct flight, imagine, from Buffalo to Long Beach on JetBlue for a while, which seemed to me like the most ideal thing, but I don't think it's still connecting there. But I mean, certainly as I was saying earlier that Long Beach has memories not only of physical beauty, but of just the love of friends, and it's a place that is golden for me.
Well, you certainly made a great impression, and people love you and will love you forever for all that you did for us. So it's so great to see you again and have you be a part of this Musically Speaking series for us. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It means a lot to me, and I want to say hello to all. I know there are so many people who are listening that I love so dearly, and I can't see you, but I just want to send you my love and say Happy New Year to all of you, and hope our paths might cross somewhere soon.
Absolutely. Well, that was the last question we have time for. I want to thank Eckart and JoAnn again for being a part of the Symphony's Musically Speaking series. We really enjoyed seeing you again. And thank you all for tuning in to Musically Speaking today. We look forward to bringing you our next program in a few weeks featuring Broadway and film superstar Susan Egan. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Be well.